Hey guys, welcome back to the video. In today's video, we're going to be going over my thoughts and opinions. Remember, this is not educated. This is all just my thoughts and opinions. I'd already made this video, but I figured it was much too long for the points I stated. I basically kind of stated the same thing over and over again on accident. So I'm going to be giving my thoughts and opinions on age limits in the three branches, music's effect on mood, and education system, should it be changed. So for age limits in the three branches, this is going to mean the legislative branch. This is going to mean the judicial branch, and this is going to mean the executive branch. Now, my thought process is that since there is a minimum age limit constitutionally set, then they should also have a maximum age limit that is constitutionally set. And if that is not possible, then what I think they should do is there should be an amendment to the Constitution to get rid of the minimum age limit. And once that happens, I don't believe that there should be, how do I say this? No minimum or maximum age limits, because I believe that there actually should be. Which means that if this is all going to be the case, then instead what we do is we just make tests. And as you guys can understand, the tests can be like, for example, independently run, third-partied. Like, for example, a good idea of this is you get like 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and you get 4 independents, and then have them make the tests, and then basically just see how that goes. Because they're going to make it as unbiased as possible, really, because, you know, since it's, how do I explain this exactly? Since it's going to be run by those 3 different people, if they make it biased, it's going to be harder for those people to get in. So they're just going to make it basically just a test. And the test, who knows what it can be on, right? But if we're not going to set a maximum, then we can't have a minimum either, in my opinion. And they should just have tests that can go in there. And once these tests are made, then people can pass those tests. And if they pass them, they're allowed to still run. And then I also believe that, for example, for all of that stuff, for Supreme Court justices, it depends a little bit more. Since they kind of have life tenure that they, you know, serve with, it's a little bit complicated to say that they are just going to be out at like a certain maximum age limit. But I believe with those tests, it's not really an issue, because if they're shown that they're starting to become incapable of, you know, being able to run in this sort of position, then, you know, it would be wise for them to get out of there, because they're a Supreme Court justice. They're the highest court in all of America. You know, they cannot be still in the court if they are not mentally well and able to perform at a decent enough amount where they could continue to implement the things they actually want to implement, if that makes sense. And that's basically all I have to say for the age limits of the 3 branches. And once something like that gets made, then I believe it'll be pretty good. Boom. Music's effect on mood. So sometimes I'll listen to like super happy music makes me go happy, you know. And then sad music makes me go sad. I think you can see where this is going. Now, like, you put some like happy sad music, which is like it's happy and sad. You just kind of feel a mix of both. Isn't that kind of weird how that happens? That's why I think that music has a really big effect on mood. Sometimes I'll like listen to music and I'll feel like, wow, I am so sad, or like, wow, I am so happy now, or wow, I am so pumped to go like get like a workout in, like something like that, like just something completely random. And, you know, I feel like it's a big thing to watch out for. If you continuously listen to sad music, you're just always going to be sad all the time. If you continuously listen to happy music, you're just going to be happy all the time. What I argue is that not that you shouldn't listen to that sort of music, but that you should be aware that it does have an effect on your mood. If you're listening to a happy song and you're at a funeral, it's not going to go well for you. You know, people are going to be questioning why you're smiling and having fun at a funeral. Assuming they're the kind of people to take funerals very seriously. There's obviously other people who want to be celebrated at their funerals because they don't want it to be all sad. But if it is like the quote unquote normal Western funeral, everyone's going to be sad. And that's what I was kind of thinking is like there was one point where I was just kind of listening to sad music, and I mean I hated my life. I mean, like you seriously, this is anecdotal, right? I just did not like my life. I did not enjoy it because I was just listening to sad music. So I just kept feeling sad, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was able to pull myself out of it, but like there's some people that can't, and they would continuously listen to that music over and over and over again until they get so sad till they can't like do anything anymore. So I feel like people need to be very, very careful listening to certain kind of music that has such a large effect on your mood. And that's all I really have to say for that. Now, who's ready for boom? You ready for this? Education system, should it be changed? I might be making a video on this here soon. If you check out my TikTok channel, you guys can see actually I have journals I upload on there where I explain if I'm going to be uploading a certain kind of video or what's going on. And usually I try to make them a minute long. used to make the time limit 10 minutes long. Change it to a minute long because I just want to get the information out there. And yeah, you can see what I'm going to upload on there. But should the education system be changed? I think, yes, it should be changed. The education system, the way it works right now, is very weird. And I personally think if somebody has a mastery of like, how do I explain this? For like a test, if you were to get like 70% right, that's good, in my opinion. Though, it depends what it's about. And also the 4 subjects. They emphasize science, English, history, and what's the other one? Science, history, English. There's like one more. And I can't remember it for some reason. Wow. All right, anyways. Math. There we go, math. And, I feel like I understand it because the whole point of it is to learn critical thinking, basically. How many different subjects can you learn? Only thing I don't understand is some of it is a little insane. Chemistry, nobody needs to know chemistry, in my opinion. It is great for critical thinking, right? I think people shouldn't be learning stuff like that. If they want to go into a career where they want to get they want to do something with chemistry, something that involves chemistry, yes, get them in a chemistry course. And I think there should still be a basics. Like, for example, I think there should be, basic Englishes, like all the way up to like English 2, like, for example, like let's say a school goes all the way up to English 4. I believe it should be maybe English 3 or English 2. Let's say a school goes up all the way to, let's say they do geometry, algebra 1, algebra 2, and then they do calculus. Let's say that's what your school schedule is. I believe they should go all the way up to algebra 2 and then basically stop there. Nobody needs to be learning calculus. You will never, ever use calculus. The whole point is critical thinking. I will discuss that later. Don't worry. And then, for example, history. I believe we should, because usually you learn about the government of the U.S., you learn about governments around the world, the history of the U.S., and history of basically the world. That's usually how history classes go. I believe that all of those should actually stay, because those are all very important. However, the way they should be taught should be changed. For example, like if a student fails a test, they should get like unlimited retakes, in my opinion, until the end of the course. Because if they master something, they master it, okay? And I think it should be that if they, for example, do happen to fail it, but then they pass it later on, just for like grade sakes, so that people don't like try and do it, it should be, for example, they pass it, when it's due, like normal, right? Or let's say they pass it the first time, basically, on its normal due date and everything. They get that, and let's say they get it 100%. They should keep that 100%. Let's say they failed the first time, but they're getting to take it again, but it's still within the due date. I believe they should still get 100%. But once it's past the due date, and I believe that 100% should be down to maybe like a 90%, and whatever time it is. But then once they've also had to retake it, and they've also had to get it past the due date, yeah, and they have to retake it, and they've gotten it past the due date as well, then I believe their 100% should be taken down to an 80%. So, they can still pass the class. There's definitely classes that do that, but there's some classes that will say, if you did not do it on time, you are just going to fail. I don't like that because let's be honest, there's some people that just like some people just have stuff going on, which is why sometimes you can ask teachers and they will be totally fine with you getting to, for example, redo it at a later time because you're on vacation, maybe somebody's in the hospital and you just do not have time to focus on work right now because you're in grief. There's stuff like that. However, it's all about getting better because not everybody's at the same point in their life, okay? And I'm not trying to say that, everyone should be lazy and just, they don't really have to try that hard in school. But to be fair, there's a lot of people I know that they are working 30 hours a week and they are juniors. They cannot do that and schoolwork. It just does not play out well. So they need more time for certain things than other people. Sure, they're still going to have to do the same work overall because they still had to complete it, right? That's still what's happening. They're still having to complete it. But maybe there was just 1 week they were like really not in the mood to do any work because that happens. Like sometimes you just get in those deep shallows where for some reason you cannot escape the fact like for some reason the work is boring you. And honestly, if the work's that bad, in my opinion, it's the teacher's fault. If somebody does not want to learn your class that bad, it's the teacher's fault entirely, which is why I'm now going to kind of skip that reason actually, which is kind of funny, and go on to the critical thinking. I understand people will say, oh, well, we still need to teach critical thinking, which is why I believe those classes, for example, that freed up, because we got to English 2, so that freed up 2 of those, and none of the chemistries, so some people usually have to, I would have to take chemistry 1 and 2, so that would free up 2 extra classes, and then we also got rid of 1 math class, so that frees up 5 classes, right? And, it depends how your school goes, obviously, so it depends how it works, but I believe there should be a specific class just for reading comprehension, and like your whole thing, you don't write a single thing. You could maybe write like a report on what you understood about it, like that's, for example, correctly, but you should not like write an essay on it. It should mainly just be reading comprehension. How much can you understand this text? What is it trying to get at? What is the meaning? Like that, like just focus on that basically the whole time. There should be minimum writing. Obviously, like reports are fine, stuff like that. Because, some people, if they can't understand it, in the first place, they can never write it. And I get it. English classes, they usually they do teach reading comprehension. They do teach all of that. But the issue is they need to, I think, break it down a little bit and just focus on one the entire time. Because at least for me, all my English classes, it was reading comprehension combined with the writing at the same time. I believe there should be one specifically focused on reading comprehension. And it should probably be the earliest one. Because there's some people that I know that they could be the best writers ever. If they had to write like something based off of something, they could write it. You know what I mean? Like you give them the information very clearly, they can write about it. There's some things out there you just can't understand it. Like, I mean, there's somebody else out there who could be like, no, this makes total sense. This is what this is trying to say. But that other person will go, I have no clue what this is trying to say, right? That could be because of words, could be because of reading, anything to do with reading comprehension, right? So just focus on the reading comprehension part. And I believe that those people will do a whole lot better. And then we get into another thing. That's one class. The second class should be to do with research. There is a lot of research articles out there, and there's a lot of people falling for bad research articles. It's very commonplace, and this literally can change people's lives sometimes. A single research article can change the lifestyle of somebody. So it's a very large aspect. And, so I believe there should be a class on just understanding how to read research articles. Because, initially when I first started getting into YouTube and I had to read a bunch of research articles, I had already had to read them for college classes and stuff, and maybe for like some high school classes, right? I mean, those helped teach me a lot. However, even when you get into YouTube videos and all of a sudden the research articles goes from like, oh, like you have to cite like 3 sources. I mean, it depends what kind of college class you've been in. I took like political science, one of the courses I had to cite like 10 research articles, so that's a little bit different. But most classes, like maybe you're doing like 3 to 5, not that many. With the YouTube I do now, I think there was one video specifically I had to do 20 different sources. It was like outrageous. Like, you know how many sources that is to read and try to understand? It was so confusing trying to read everything because I never got taught how to read it. So they should teach an entire class just based off of how exactly you're supposed to understand these. They can even do some practice with writing for their own research article with made up statistics or whatever, or maybe they could even like run a lab where they do it themselves, and do some stuff like that. All right, and those can both help with critical thinking a lot. Now we have 3 extra classes. What else do we want to focus on? Media literacy. People fall for media literacy all the time. It's like reading comprehension, but in this time it's visual. And people fall for it all the time. They fall for these misrepresentations. Like the first thing you see when you open TikTok is you see a naked man in a grocery store screaming about the horrible things in vegetables. They're plant defense chemicals that are gonna rip your intestines apart, and then your whole family will come crying at your funeral because you died because you ate a broccoli. And people will openly just fall for this commonly, very, very commonly, because this dude sounds so persuasive. How could he be so confident? And look how jacked he is. He's got to be telling the truth. There's no way he's selling a course. Just don't check his subscription. But anyways, the whole point there, people fall for it very, very often. So teach all of this stuff to do with that, basically. Teach people that everything you see on the internet is not factual. And then you teach them that, for example, just because somebody said it does not mean it's true. And thankfully, with the research article class, they could be misrepresenting articles. Maybe articles were published in 1980 and they were done on one rat. Rats are not humans and it was one rat. Are we serious? We cannot use that to discuss an entire population, right? And thankfully, that's where the research article class would come in helpful for. Well, you know how to read it, go ahead and read it. You can probably read it quicker because you know how to read it as well. And now you're cutting down people falling for this stuff a lot more now, right? And you can also tackle other things, for example, like just common logical fallacies they'll use and just other stuff like that. And it'll probably help people a massive amount. Okay, now we have 2 extra classes. What do we focus on? If I'm going to be honest, I actually don't really know. So I'm going to be trying to think of these kind of on the spot. People usually talk about arts. They talk about humanities. They talk about all of that stuff. In my opinion, I believe there's some college classes that should be done in high schools. For example, there's this class I'm taking, sociology. And once you understand it, first of all, what I think they should do is not focus on the whole who did this and who did that. I cannot stand that part of college classes. I totally understand it, right? If you want to be a major in this class, you gotta know who invented what. In my opinion, if you're going to be talking about someone, you do not. I think people should not have to memorize names with who did what and who did this. If you want to, for example, go in deeper and you want to take sociology as a major, that's different. Yes, but if it's an introduction class, you should just be kind of going over the basics. No people should be mentioned because I'm so sick of, for my entire ethics class, the entirety of ethics, all we did was basically go over the people who invented blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And it was so boring because I didn't care who invented it. I just wanted to know about the thing. And then the entire time, all the quizzes, of course, not all of them, but a majority of them were just focused on memorizing who invented what. That's not going to help me. Okay, that's not going to help me with anything. Instead, teach me what happened, right? And then you can end up learning who invented what later on when you want to go on. There should almost be a separate class entirely just for the popular figureheads who invented all this because it almost won't help you. And it's just so frustrating. It's nice because it puts a name on who invented it, right? And you're giving credit, but when you're learning it, right, it's so frustrating. I would rather people never give me credit and learn all this stuff I'm teaching them than give me credit and people just have to kind of learn half about what I teached because half of the class was spent just focusing on what I did. That doesn't it doesn't matter, right? If they want to do that, make it a separate class. That's my opinion. I could definitely, all these opinions I could be focused on. If you have a different idea, definitely go shoot it in the comments. I could be wrong on many of these, right? I'm totally fine with that. This is why this is just my thoughts and ideas, especially with that one. That's mainly just my idea because I know there's definitely some people who definitely disagree with that. And I'm guessing it's because of the whole credibility part, right? That helps people. And then also you're having to learn how to memorize names, stuff like that. But, go shoot your idea in the comments if you have any. But anyways, this class like sociology would be very, very good because then you realize, all of humanity is just people, following a culture, right? Everyone just follows a random culture that they're basically assigned based off of where they're born and who they're born with, right? And like once you realize that, you realize just how like interesting the whole world is. So sociology should probably be one of those classes. And then the next one I believe should be about honestly, I don't really know how to. Whew, it's a good one. I wonder what college class could be done, because there's honestly a lot out there that I enjoyed. I almost believe that there should be maybe, I don't really know for sure. Maybe like a logic class. I can't say for sure. So if you have like a permanent fifth class and you'd like to put it in the comments, go ahead and do that. But I feel like a logic class is the only thing I could really think of. I haven't even taken a logic class yet, but I've heard that it's offered at my school that I'm at, for example. But that would probably be a good class to teach, because I imagine what you learn in there is, well, logic. What about this is true, and like what kind of logical fallacies? Honestly, I don't really know what's taught in logic. Let me. Formal reasoning, validity, soundness of arguments, proof theory, model theory. Okay, yeah, I remember learning about some of that in ethics as well. So yes, no, take a logic class for sure. After hearing that description, that sounds like, I remember my ethics professor bringing that up. If you ever gonna go into ethics, he was saying like, if you want to do anything to do with philosophy, he said take logic. Yeah, definitely take logic, because then you'll also understand a lot of the whole stuff, like validity of arguments, how sound everything is, the proof they have to do with it, and combine that with all the other classes that I've said that you should take. And you got a pretty powerful mix up here, in my opinion at least. So those should be the extra 5 classes. Now we're going to get really quickly. I know this is a very large topic, but it's the entire education system. It's going to be a long topic. Now I believe that people who teach college classes, or any class in general, should never assign work out of class where you have to learn something. If you're going to learn something, it has to be in the class. Now, understand when I say this, that I'm not saying there should be no homework. I'm saying the learning should be done in class. If you want to assign an article that somebody has to read, then that should be done in class. If you want to assign a book that has, for example, an essay that has to be made out of that can be assigned outside of class if it's based only off of the thing that was done in class. Because I cannot stand it when you're forced to learn outside of your class time extra topics. You can spend that extra outside of class time to, for example, just writing down what you learned basically, but it should not be spent on learning. The learning should be done in the classroom, right? That's what I strongly believe. There can be homework, but not also a lot of homework as well. And the main reason I say that is because there would be some classes where we would do the learning outside of class, then you would do the understanding inside of class. Guess what? People don't like homework. What's going to happen is, because they did not do the learning outside of class, because a lot of people don't, because they don't like to do that and it takes a long time, they just can't even do the in-class work. Because if you haven't learned it, you can't do the in-class work in the first place. However, if you learned it inside of class, you can always do it outside of class. I still believe that they should both be done inside of class. However, if you want to make it where it's like that, then you can, but the learning has to be done in class. All of my college algebra class was learning outside of class and then just doing a worksheet when we got to class. What's the point of you being there if you're not going to teach us it? Oh, and then let's not even talk about the teachers that sometimes have this issue of being very rude when you ask a question. I remember there's some classes, I'm not going to name any classes, but there was definitely some classes where I felt like if I asked a question, this teacher was going to maul me in my sleep. I just it makes you not want to learn when the teacher is so angry when you ask a question. Sure, they can sometimes get fed up when you're not paying attention at all, and that's the reason. But most of the time you are paying attention, you just don't understand. Sometimes maybe you zoned out for 5 minutes. It's fine, right? It's not a big deal. Your whole reason is to teach, not to get mad at the person asking questions. You're not a teacher if that's the case. You're just somebody who wants to say what you learned. Teacher helps people learn, not just say what they learned and try to explain it to people, but then get mad. Anyways, I believe that should be a very strong thing. However, the whole teacher thing is a little bit harder to control because you can't really understand that, but that's just more of how teachers should act. And then we have the whole like learning system in general with the whole college classes and stuff, certain degrees requiring certain stuff. That's all I think pretty fine. And I think if all of those requirements were made, I feel like it would be a whole lot better of a learning experience for everyone, in my opinion. I think it would be. So I believe if we enact all of those, it'll definitely change a whole lot. And like the thing is with the whole critical thinking is everyone still has all the critical thinking because they replaced them with classes that are very, very good for critical thinking. So it would still stay this exact same, just really focusing on some of the issues that people have. And I believe there was something else I brought up in my classes, in my video, I mean, but I honestly kind of can't remember. And that's basically a summary of all the points I made. I know, right? Summary, and we're like, I'm going to guess like 20 minutes in. Whew, 25 minutes in. But yeah, no, summary, and it's like 26 minutes. But that is basically all of my thoughts and opinions about it. There's something I could have forgotten, and if that's the case, I'll just bring it up in the next My Thoughts and Ideas video. But thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, and only if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Remember, these are my thoughts and opinions. Go do your own research. This is not a research video, just for thoughts and opinions. And have a good day.